Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In today's video, we will explore a wacky menagerie of monsters that the Daikaiju Gamera fought off. When Godzilla, the king of monsters, was busy battling baddies, Gamera, the guardian of the universe, was protecting the planet. The giant flying turtle kaiju first featured in the 1965 movie Gamera, the Giant Monster, and was introduced as a destructive force of nature, but he soon transformed into the role of a protector, the friend of all children, a guardian kaiju, who emerged time and again to rid the Earth of various kaiju threats through the Showa era and the Heisei era. In an unmade Millennium era film, Gamera was also supposed to fight Godzilla, which would have been a dream come true for kaiju fans. Without further ado, let's explore Gamera's gallery of villains. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Barugon. Gamera's first ever opponent gave him quite a tough fight with a series of strange powers. Imagine being attacked by a rainbow beam or punched by a tongue. We are talking about the 50-meter tall, 80 meters in length reptilian kaiju Barugon here, who was introduced in the second Gamera movie in 1966's Gamera vs. Barugon, and then also featured in 1980's Gamera Super Monster through stock footage. This reptilian monster emerged once every 1,000 years, which coincided with the film's events when a bunch of greedy treasure hunters brought an egg of a Barugon into mainland Japan, accidentally causing it to hatch under an infrared light. Growing to humongous proportions, Barugon ventured on a destructive mission, displaying his array of bizarre abilities such as the Rainbow Death Ray and Chilling Liquid, an extendable tongue, before finally facing off with Gamera in Osaka. Barugon could project a superheated rainbow beam from the 7 spikes on his back, which could destroy incoming missiles and set blocks of buildings on fire in the film. And in the manga, it could vaporize oceans and even cause tsunamis. However, when reflected back with mirrors, the Rainbow Death Ray greatly injured the kaiju himself. It didn't have any effect on Gamera, who could draw energy from the beam instead. Gamera was susceptible to Barugon's Chilling Liquid, which he released from the tip of his tongue as an icy mist, and managed to freeze the turtle kaiju for days. With a temperature of -100 degrees Celsius, it could create ice storms and freeze anything it touched within seconds. Barugon's stretchy tongue acted as a hammering weapon and could also pull objects towards him. In the manga, Barugon got 2 cool additions: the ability to regenerate and hypnotize humans. This reptilian kaiju's biggest weakness was water, which appeared to corrode his skin and weaken his powers. Barugon met his end when Gamera dragged him to the bottom of a lake. Gyaos. Gamera's second opponent, who craftily grabbed the spot for his arch-nemesis, was the vampire-ish bat-like creature Gyaos. This creature made more film appearances than any of its fellow baddies, stemming from different origin stories. Making its debut appearance in 1967's Gamera vs. Gyaos, this insidious kaiju was said to belong to a primitive species of flying reptiles. With a height of 65 meters and a wingspan of 172 meters, Gyaos lived in an underground cave. In the 1969 movie Gamera vs. Giron, Gyaos made a comeback in an alien avatar as the Space Gyaos. In the Heisei era films, Gyaos was explained as a genetically engineered superweapon created by the people of the lost city of Atlantis to protect them from the serpentine monster Garasharp. The Gyaos multiplied incessantly through asexual reproduction and devoured Garasharp, before feasting on the Atlanteans. Interestingly, Gyaos is the reason that Gamera came into being. The turtle kaiju was created as a last resort by the Atlanteans to save their people from Gyaos. Gamera managed to destroy the majority of the Gyaos infestation, but some clusters of eggs survived into the present times. When Gamera's attacks to destroy the villainous legion affected the Earth by depleting its mana, the changed atmosphere made the Gyaos eggs hatch, giving birth to the super-evolved Hyper Gyaos. These murderous creatures rapidly grew to humongous sizes by feeding on meat, preferably human flesh, in the dark of the night. Gyaos' strongest weapon was its supersonic scalpel, an intense energy beam it fired from its mouth, capable of slicing through the strongest of kaiju flesh, even Gamera's. Gyaos severed its own foot with the beam to escape Gamera's clutches, later regenerating it. In the Heisei era, the most powerful 85-meter tall monster named Super Gyaos had an impressive flight speed of Mach 4.2, bested by the Hyper Gyaos at Mach 4.5, which was significantly higher than Gamera's. Gyaos's gigantic wings could even generate storm-like winds, reminding one of King Ghidorah. Gyaos, a creature of might, could release a fog-like mist which was powerful enough to obscure sunlight and extinguish fire, both of which were its weaknesses. Gamera killed the Showa-era Gyaos by dragging it to the tip of Mount Fuji when the sun was rising. A combination of the sunlight and volcano embers burnt the monster. The Heisei-era Gyaos had a massive showdown with Gamera in 1995's Gamera, Guardian of the Universe, when Gamera attacked the Tokyo Tower from beneath, where the Super Gyaos had built its nest and laid eggs. After an aerial battle, when Gamera crashed into a factory, he was revived by the explosion and blasted the Super Gyaos head off with its plasma fireball. In the Heisei era, Gyaos got a number of upgrades, and one of them was attacking with its hind claws, while releasing a paralyzing neurotoxin through them. In 1999's Gamera 3, Revenge of Iris, Gamera's efforts to kill swarms and swarms of the Hyper Gyaos led to a lot of human casualties and destruction, with people losing their faith in the Guardian Gaiju, which was restored after the monster Iris made an appearance, but more on that later. Virus. Gamera's next opponent was an alien squid monster who could talk. I shall kill Gamera, no matter what happens now. To do this, I must have all of your lives. That's Virus addressing his minions, who had funny, googly eyes when they were posing as humans. In 1968's Gamera vs. Virus, the aliens, named Virians from the planet Virus, attempted to conquer Earth as the planet's abundance of atmospheric nitrogen made it the perfect spot for the Virians to thrive. The wicked aliens exploited Gamera's fondness for children by kidnapping 2 Boy Scouts and mind-controlling the Guardian Kaiju. When their plans were thwarted by Gamera, the Virians fused into their boss, also called Boss, to transform into the gigantic 96-meter-tall squid kaiju Virus, weighing a whopping 120 metric tons. Virus had 6 prehensile tentacles with suction cups at the endings, which also operated as legs. These tentacles were wrapped around its opponents to choke or restrain them, were 10 times harder than diamonds, and had the strength of thousands of elephant trunks. Virus's petal-like head could fuse to form a sharp, spear-like weapon which was capable of piercing Gamera's tough surface and even stone. Virus's worst nightmare was getting frozen, which is exactly what Gamera did. Gamera flew the squid monster higher into the atmosphere, and it got frozen up by spinning really fast, and then it dropped into the ocean to disintegrate. In a later comic series, Virus is featured as a creature cloned from the DNA of Gyaos. In the 2023 Netflix series Gamera Rebirth, Virus received a gamut of upgrades, being able to shoot electricity from its tentacles and create energy shields. Giron. In 1969's Gamera vs. Giron, Gamera's adversary appeared in the form of a blade-headed alien monster, Giron. When the planet Terra was infested by space Gyaos and the environment destroyed, the last remaining Terrans began using the colossal Giron as their guardian monster. Kept beneath a riverbed, Giron was an 85-meter-tall kaiju with a jumping power of 1,300 meters per leap. When the Terrans kidnapped 2 kids from Japan, Gamera followed the spaceship all the way through space and into the alien planet Terra, only to clash with a stout, tailless kaiju with a gigantic blade for a head. Giron's teeth were 60 times sharper than those of a piranha, and the blade jutting out of his forehead was 100 times harder than diamond. The blade could slice through Gamera's hard shell by striking it repeatedly and deflect the Space Gyaos' powerful supersonic scalpel. Giron's blade was equipped with a secret compartment for releasing incredibly sharp shurikens. In its first battle with Gamera, Giron struck the turtle kaiju with the shurikens, making him bleed and rendering him unconscious. In the final showdown, the shurikens struck Gamera's limbs, preventing him from flying away. When Giron exhausted his stock of shurikens, Gamera defeated his opponent by shoving a missile through the empty shuriken compartment and lighting it up with his fiery breath, causing Giron to explode. Jigger. In his next adventure in 1970's Gamera vs. Jigger, the Guardian Kaiju was almost killed by the titular villain, but Gamera's faithful friends, a bunch of kids, saved him. Jigger was a horned demonic reptile, and as per legends, she once lived on the continent of Mu. In present times, when an artifact, a statue called the Devil's Whistle, was taken out from Wester Island, Jigger was awakened from her prolonged slumber. The ringed sound that the Devil's Whistle generated was extremely painful for Jigger, who chased after the statue into mainland Japan, clashing with Gamera several times. Jigger reached a length of 80 meters, weighing more than double the Showa-era Gamera at 200 metric tons. Jigger was an arsenal in herself who could shoot small spears called solid saliva missiles from the tusk-like openings on her face. These saliva missiles impaled Gamera's arms and legs in their first fight, preventing him from retracting his limbs into the shell and flying away. Jigger's tail was topped with a scorpion-like stinger which could pierce her victims and plant a young, parasitic Jigger into the victim's body. When hatched, the Jigger babies would kill the host in the most gruesome manner. Reminds you of the MonsterVerse Mutos, right? Using this technique, Jigger impregnated Gamera by planting offspring into his lungs, rendering the turtle kaiju in a comatose condition, who was then saved by a bunch of kids by carrying out an operation. In addition to Jigger's pointy weapons, she could also emit the superheated magnetum ray from her head, which instantly reduced humans to skeletons and incinerated structures. Gamera was immune to the ray, but the sound it generated damaged his eardrums. The palms and soles of this quadrupedal reptile were also equipped with powerful magnetic suckers, which could also draw objects towards her and enabled her to latch on to Gamera's shell. Gamera was able to finish off Jigger by luring her with the devil's whistle and piercing her skull with it. Zigra. Gamera's last Showa-era villain was an alien fish kaiju from the faraway planet Zigra, on which the flesh-eating fish species feed on those who live on land. Also named Zigra, the 80-meter-tall kaiju faced off against the Guardian monster in 1971's Gamera vs. Zigra. After the aquatic habitats on the planet Zigra became uninhabitable by pollution, the monster Zigra ventured into Earth with the intention of raising humans as cattle and ruling the ocean. Due to higher water pressures on Earth, Zigra grew to a colossal size of 80 meters in height, weighing 75 metric tons. Zigra was quite smug, which is evident from the threat he issued to the humans. "You are an ugly life form, unfit to be allowed to use your oceans freely. I am a beautiful life form and should have the right to rule over these oceans." After Zigra took 2 kids hostage, he naturally irked the wrath of Gamera, resulting in 2 rounds of battle. Zigra could project 3 separate beams: the paralyzing orange cell activity suspension beam from the red gem on his forehead, which incapacitated Gamera, the green 4th-dimensional beam, which can teleport objects and change their matter, and the red beam, which destroyed everything on its path and generated massive earthquakes. Zigra had a swordfish-like appearance with an elongated pointy head and sharp fins, with which he sliced through Gamera's flesh. Despite being a fish kaiju, Zigra developed limbs when on land and could stand upright to fight Gamera, but he was vastly outmatched. Gamera delivered a humiliating blow to Zigra by sticking a giant rock on its pointy snout and then playing his theme song on Zigra's sharp dorsal fins like a xylophone, before blasting him with his fire breath. In the manga version, Zigra was still an alien created as a biological weapon who fled to Earth to hide in the Pacific Ocean. Gamera Super Monster. All of Gamera's Showa-era opponents, Barugon, Gyaos, Virus, Giron, Jigger, and Zigra converged in the last film of the era, featuring as pawns of the alien pirate ship Xanon. 1980's Gamera Super Monster was made in an attempt to revive the Gamera franchise, which had been on a break since 1971. However, most of the movie comprised of stock footage of monsters from the previous films and failed to impress fans. The Gamera series was resurrected after a 15-year hiatus with the 1995's Gamera, the Guardian of the Universe, in which Gyaos made a bigger, badder, meaner comeback as Super Gyaos to fight the Turtle Kaiju. This film was the first entry in the Gamera trilogy of the Heisei era. Legion. The second entry of the trilogy, 1996's Gamera 2, Advent of Legion, introduced a brand new spine-chilling monster species, the Legion. A species of extraterrestrial monsters, a symbiotic silicone-based kaiju that took several forms, the Legion arrived on Earth on board an asteroid and wanted to colonize the planet, so that they could feed off it and reproduce to increase their Legion army. The queen of this colony of monsters was Mother Legion, who looked like a menacing cross between a spider and a scorpion, towering at a height of 140 meters and reaching 160 meters in length. This sinister creature commanded an army of soldier legions measuring just 3 meters in length, but they made up for it with their agility and painful stabs. Mother Legion could produce as many as 100 soldier legions within an hour in her egg chamber. The species' most gigantic form was the Legion plant, which which was a flower-like propagation device weighing a whopping 3,000 metric tons. The Legion attempted to grow several of these flowers across Japan so that they could blast out a pod in space with the intention of infecting another planet. But Gamera stopped them in their tracks each time, even sacrificing his life once. Mother Legion's most lethal weapon was her microwave shell, which was guarded by her nasal horn and which could shoot microwave rays capable of incinerating tanks, annihilating structures, and destroying Gamera's shell. Now that's quite a feat. When Gamera tore off her nasal horn, Mother Legion replaced it with the red rod attacks, which were superheated energy tendrils capable of burning Gamera's flesh. Mother Legion's 5 pairs of clawed limbs could generate energy waves powerful enough to disrupt communication of electronic devices. They could also cast an electromagnetic shield around the monster, protecting her from incoming attacks. Charred and wounded by the red rod attacks, Gamera turned to his last resort. Gamera soaked up a large amount of Earth's mana to be able to fire his ultimate plasma beam from his chest cavity, which made Mother Legion explode, thus ending the Legion's invasion of Earth. It is said that Gamera can use the ultimate plasma attack only once in his lifetime due to its effects on both the kaiju and the Earth's ecosystem. Iris. In 1999's Gamera 3, Revenge of Iris, what hatched as an innocent life form quickly transformed into a flesh-eating, life-force-absorbing, tentacle-sprouting kaiju. Iris, Gamera's last foe of the Heisei era. Iris came with a bunch of impressive stats, towering at a height of 99 meters and weighing 199 metric tons. He had a wingspan of 199.9 meters and a flight speed of, wait for it, Mach 9. Hatched from an egg and brought up as a pet by a young girl, this mysterious creature's origins are attributed to a number of theories. According to a Japanese myth, Iris was an ancient demon named Ryuseicho who would bring about an apocalypse if released and was entrapped inside a stone egg in a shrine. Another theory is that its name Ryuseicho comes from constellations of Chinese mythology that depict a guardian bird of the south clashing with the guardian turtle of the north. It is also proposed that Iris was created by the Atlanteans as a kaiju who could stand up to Gamera if he intended to harm the planet. Meanwhile, Iris is revealed to be genetically similar to Gamera's arch-nemesis Gyaos. Of these theories, Iris is mostly linked with Gyaos because of their genetic similarity, and is also connected to the Atlanteans as an Atlantean Magatama bead was found in the shrine containing his egg. Iris reached his final form by devouring animals from the woods and also by sucking out the life essence from humans, leaving them as shriveled corpses. Iris' tentaclancers, originating from his back, could extend up to 1,999 meters and had spear-like ends. He could also shoot supersonic scalpel, way more powerful ones than Gyaos, which sliced through Gamera's shell. Iris also formed an anti-plasma field with his tentaclancers, which deflected Gamera's plasma attacks and set Tokyo ablaze. Iris could absorb his targets into a chest chamber called the Gene Snatcher and establish psychic connections with others through the Atlantean Magatama. Iris had retractable spear absorbers on his arms, with which he impaled Gamera and also pierced through his arm to replicate the turtle kaiju's power of shooting plasma fireballs. Gamera freed himself by severing his own arm, absorbed the plasma fireballs that Iris began shooting from his tentaclancers, and transformed his severed stump into the Banishing Fist. Gamera then punched through Iris' wounded chest, putting an end to the life-sucking kaiju. Zetus. The only Millennium-era Gamera movie, 2006's Gamera the Brave, came with a child-friendly take on both the Guardian Kaiju and his opponent. In this movie, Gamera is called Todo, named by the little boy who raised him. Todo hatched as a regular turtle and went on to become a gigantic kaiju measuring 30 meters in height, 50 meters in length, and weighing 900 metric tons. The film explained Todo as the successor of the Gamera, who sacrificed his life in 1973 in order to save a Japanese village from a Gyaos attack. Todo's opponent in the movie was a gigantic part amphibian, part reptile sea kaiju, Zetus, who resembled a hunched Godzilla with spikes all over his back and tail. Zetus was initially a sea lizard which fed on the corpses of Gyaos and mutated into a bipedal, human-eating kaiju measuring 50 meters in height and weighing 2,000 metric tons. Interestingly, much like the Dilophosaurus from Jurassic Park, Zetus had a pair of frills that could pop out from behind its head as a sign of intimidation. Zetus' most notable weapon was his tongue, which can extend up to 100 meters and impale opponents. The tongue has a spear-like tip and releases a naturally secreted acid combination that severely injured Todo by penetrating his toughened shell. Zetus' tail was powerful enough to lift up Todo and send him crashing into a high-rise. With close combat attacks, Zetus wounded Todo by slashing him with his tail, teeth, and claws, which can also release acid. Zetus could also leap up to 200 meters to dodge his opponents and launch the powerful brawl kicks. When Todo blasted a fireball down Zetus' throat, it even managed to survive the attack. In the final showdown, Todo ripped off Zetus' harpoon-like tongue in half and blasted him with a powerful fireball, blowing the kaiju into pieces. It is theorized that Zetus would have continued to evolve into something even more monstrous if Todo had failed to destroy him. Marvelous verdict. With that, we come to the end of our list of the menacing monsters that Gamera faced off against in the film franchise. Some of Gamera's opponents returned in the 2023 animated series Gamera Rebirth, such as a swarm of Gyaos, a more robust form of Jigger, an upgraded Zigra, a stretched Giron, and an X-ray vision virus. Which of these monsters piqued your interest the most? And which ones would you love to see Gamera battle again if the Turtle Kaiju makes it to the Monsterverse? Tell us in the comments below. Are we rooting for a Gamera comeback? Absolutely yes. If you liked our video, please give us a shout out and watch this space for more marvelous content.